Hello everybody, welcome to the GM tent here at Carlisle. My name is David Simpson. I work for General Motors up in Michigan. My title at GM is Future Product Quality Manager, and I work in the powertrain side of the business. I specifically work on transmissions on all of these cars that are here, and then on the eRay I work on the drive unit and the battery system that drive the eRay and the front axle. So I'm going to go through a little bit of a tech talk today here. I'll touch on what is new and different for transmission for the ZR1 that we just released. I'll do kind of a reminder on the transmission overall. People like to ask me about the maintenance schedule. I'll try and simplify it and help everyone out as much as I can, trying to get that good information directly out there to the customers. And then I'll touch on kind of high-level eRay stuff again. That car's still very new. First customers are getting their vehicles. So we'll do a high level of that stuff, and then I'll do Q&A at the end. So starting with ZR1 specific, the new one here, and on my stuff for the transmission. So overall transmission is very similar to what we've had in every variant from Stingray up to Z06 and eRay so far. There are a good amount of tweaks that we've had to make to handle the power that the LT7 engine is pushing through the transmission. So a reminder for everyone, ZR1's making 1,064 horsepower. Obviously we have to capture that and all the torque that's coming through it into the transmission to get it down to those back wheels. So what we've done internal to the transmission is the speed gears, we've actually widened most of them quite a bit to handle that load. So second gear through fifth gear are actually a little bit wider on the face. Fifth and sixth gear have additional webbing in the center of the gear to handle that load. All of the gears, the speed gears in the transmission, are shot peened to take and add a little bit more durability to take that power. The pinion for the differential that's in the transmission has a different machining process to it. It's a little bit more refined to handle, again, that torque going directly through the pinion. And then the last, I'll say, big change for the gearing is the micro finish on first through sixth gear is, I'll say polished or cleaned up a little bit more just to make it handle those loads a little better and last a little bit with the type of power that's going through it. So those are the gearing changes. There's a lot of oil management changes as well. So with ZR1, right, it's a track monster, and in those high complex G-loading situations, the biggest thing we want to do in the transmission is get our oil back down into the sump to be able to pump it around through the rest of the transmission where we need it, whether it's to rods to shift the transmission or to lubricate or to cool it. So in the differential, we've actually added a baffle to pull oil out of the differential. We end up with more oil in that ring and pinion than we need just driving around. So we've kind of funneled that down and out with a baffle to put it back into the sump and pump it around the rest of the transmission. We've added lubrication throughout with a couple of additional sprayers in the transmission. We did some sprayers on Z06 for M1M. We've added a couple of more sprayers to directly point that oil and that lube for cooling at the areas that we need it. Sixth gear is a big place that we need it, especially if you're going to run a top speed pull in this car. So we spray oil directly on those, keep them nice and cool and lubricated. Oil management overall is, I'll say, kind of tweaked throughout the transmission. Updated again to get all that stuff down. And then the other big difference is a lot of the bearing loads go up with that additional power and torque coming through the transmission. So a lot of our clamp loads on our bearings we've had to either adjust or improve. The intermediate plate is one place that we did that. It's kind of a strengthened intermediate plate to hold those bearings down. And then the inner input shaft is actually beefed up to handle those loads that are going through it. So if you're not familiar with the DCT or you haven't seen my cutaway when it's been here before, unfortunately I don't have it here. With the dual clutch, we actually have two shafts that ride inside and outside of each other. One runs the even gears that are on the far side, one runs the odd gears that are on the back side of the transmission, and they actually spin inside of each other. So that had to get strengthened to handle the additional torque coming through. Output shafts, that's a question I get a lot. The output shafts on the transmission have not changed, but our half shafts in the vehicle have changed. There's a new bolt pattern on the rear of the ZR1 to handle the power and the loads that are coming through the car. But internal to the transmission and our output shafts, those are the same internally. So if you looked at the M1K that's in ZR1, that's the transmission RPO, versus an M1M and a Z06 or a Stingray M1L, you wouldn't probably be able to tell from the outside of the transmission what's different. Everything's done on the inside there. And then one improvement that we had to make that we actually rolled across the board for all transmissions is the tail housing. So in analysis, we learned we needed a little bit stronger, a little bit more support in that tail housing. We changed our die casting for the M1K, and we said, hey, let's just take this and push it across the board for all of our variants. So that's one improvement that we're just going to push across and help all those transmissions out for any additional loads or anything like that they'll see. So ZR1, that is kind of my specific transmission updates and changes. So you still have all the things that a lot of people tend to like about the dual clutch. Paddles operate almost exactly the same. You can pull both paddles at the same time, put the car in neutral, rev the engine, do whatever you want to do there. If you're in manual or temp tap, you can hold that low downshift paddle and get to your lowest available gear. So say you're sitting on the highway, decide you want to pass that car that's in front of you and get out of the way. You can hold that, you'll do whatever downshift is available. You might go 7 to 3rd or whatever and rip right out of there and then start tapping back up after that. You can do the same thing obviously the other way, press and hold the upshift paddle and you'll get back to the highest gear. So say you get around that semi, immediately want to settle the car back down and get your fuel economy back, you can hold that upshift paddle and it'll go right up to the highest gear again there. So all of that stuff is on Stingray, is on eRay, is on Z06, and is still on ZR1. Performance launch control is one that a lot of people like to do. ZR1 will basically be the same way on that one. So get into track mode, or you can do competitive mode in sport. Turn off your traction control by pressing it twice. Go really heavy on the brake pedal and 100% throttle pedal, and that's how we'll do our launch control. So same thing on ZR1 as the other variants there. So again, everything overall, Z06, Stingray, eRay, and then ZR1. The dual clutch transmission, so it's actually 2 clutches inside and out of each other. One handles even gears, one handles odd gears. And then what customers are looking and coming to me for with questions on is maintenance is our biggest one. So all DCT dual clutch transmissions that are in the 8th generation Corvette need a 7,500 mile filter change. There's an external canister filter on this transmission that needs to be changed at the break-in mileage of 7,500. That'll get any built-in material, any break-in material, any wearing material, stuff like that out. If you want to do it early, I got no problem with that. There's nothing wrong with over-maintaining your vehicle, but if you do it at 4,000 miles, you got to do it again at that 7,500 or so there and get all that stuff out of there. I've had a lot of customers that only do 1,500 or 2,000 miles on their car a year. That's fine. What I tell them is, reminder, your oil has to be changed in the transmission at either 45,000 miles, 3 years, or 24 hours of track use. So those really low mileage customers, I basically say, hey, look, you're on a 3-year maintenance program. Every 3 years, you need that transmission filter change and your fluid drained and filled. So those really low, it makes it very easy. Those higher mileage people, again, it's a 7,500 break-in, 22,500 for the filter, and every 22,500 after that, and your oil's every 45. So if you have specific questions, come find me. I'll explain it again, figure out how many miles you specifically do, and set up what makes sense. There's been some changes to how we do that. Most of what we have changed is what's included for customers here in the US on their free maintenance visit. We recently adjusted that from 1 year to 2 years, and then 2 years now to 3 years. We're not going to make it 4 years, we're not going to make it 5 years because of that 3-year oil change requirement. So 3 years will be as far as we go on the filter change, and again, that's to help those customers that do very low mileage. The other thing that we've done that a lot of people are happy about so far is 24 and 25 cars. We've separated your free engine oil change from your free transmission canister change. So again, say a customer puts 3,000 or 4,000 miles on their car a year, they used to lose that free transmission change or have to do it early. We've separated those labor codes for the dealerships so you can come in at your 1 year, get your engine oil changed for free, and then come back at your 2 or 3 years, whatever you need it at, for that 7,500 mile transmission filter change there. So people tend to be pretty happy about that. It's creating some confusion, but once they understand it, it's a good thing, I think, for customers, and it should help dealers out as well because you won't get that conflicting information. transmission, I believe those are my highest level things I wanted to touch on. So I'll transition over to, I'll say, the other side of my day job, which is what we call PAE, or Performance All-Wheel Drive Electrification, and that is the drive unit and battery assembly for the eRay. So if anyone doesn't know yet, our eRay is not a fully electric Corvette. It's electrified for the front axle only. We still have a gas engine in the back of the vehicle, 495 horsepower LT2 6.2 liter. It's the same engine that's in the Stingrays. We've added the front drive motor to power the front wheels, so eRay is all-wheel drive. We've done that with a 1.9 kilowatt hour battery and then a drive unit up front, which is a single electric motor that'll spin up to about 17,000 RPM and then powers out through a transfer gear and a differential, just like a traditional rear-wheel drive differential did on previous generation Corvettes. So that drives out to the front axle. So it's an open diff. Both wheels do get power. You do not plug that car in. It only charges over the road as you're driving. With that, we've got a couple of electric only modes. So you can stealth in the car or you can shuttle in the car. Shuttle is electric only, front axle only, and that's for bumping around the parking lot or the garage. We were up at the hotel washing all of our cars, put the car in shuttle, drove over to my parking spot when I was done and parked it there. No need to start the engine, wake anybody up, and you're limited to 15 miles an hour in that mode. Stealth mode is kind of the best of both worlds. So you wake up really early, you're trying to get out of the house, not wake up the kids, not wake up the neighbors. You can put the car in shuttle mode, travel up to 45 miles an hour, and usually you get about 3 to 5 miles of range in that. So you can get out of the neighborhood, get rolling, and then either once you ask for too much power, you ask for over 45 miles an hour, or if you need HVAC controls at that point, the gas engine will fire up, will transition over to that all-wheel drive, and you'll keep driving away in a seamless transition there. So that's a nice one. I'll say I didn't think I was going to use it that much. My neighbors are much happier that I use that now. So I can get out and away from them, fire the gas engine up, and then keep on going from there. So some notes on the PAE drive unit. A lot of people think that you lose the frunk in the eRay. It actually sits behind the frunk, directly in line with the front axle of the car. This is a ZR1. It does not have the drive unit, but it would be right here. And if this was not a ZR1, you would still have full functionality of the trunk or the front. We can show you that on the Rapid Blue car here or the Hysteria Purple car. You lose a slight little bit on the sides for where cooling comes in, but that's about it there. The battery pack sits up the tunnel of the vehicle in between the driver and passenger seat. It's actually structure in the vehicle, and it's been designed to be there from the beginning. So we knew it was going to happen. We built it in on Stingrays or Z06s. There's just a plate that blocks that all off. There's 3 additional cooling loops for eRay. So there's one that cools the front drive motor. That front drive motor is cooled by a ULEV, we call it ultra low viscosity. It's essentially transmission oil. There's about 3.3 liters in the drive unit, and that gets cycled up to the driver's side of the vehicle for us here in North America. And there's a heat exchanger in the front of the eRay on the driver's side of the car. It's a black heat exchanger, that's for drive oil. So then there's 2 cooling loops for the eRay. One is kind of in the front right of the car. I, again, keep pointing at this car. Front right of any of the eRays, the bottom of the condenser actually has coolant flowing through it there, and that cools our powertrain electronics system from that. The powertrain electronics are the modules, all that kind of stuff located inside the battery pack. The third cooling loop that's added on eRay is in the rear of the vehicle. You can see it underneath the hatch. There's another small bottle there. And that actually is coolant that is chilled by AC refrigerant to keep the battery pack cool and running. So a lot of us drove eRays down here from Michigan. I've been driving one all summer. Even in the hottest, warmest days that we've seen in Michigan, 80, 90 and up. Some of us were in Bowling Green. That battery stays right around 100 degrees, 105 or so degrees Fahrenheit. It stays cooled very efficiently from that refrigerant system, chilling it down. Drive motor, other stuff. Trying to see my big stuff I've missed, but those are my highlights that at least I remember off my sheet. So I guess from there I will open up to Q&A. If anyone has anything transmission or eRay Drive Unit Q&A. I'll take that now, and then I'll just note any other questions. Any of us in the blue shirts here, most of us in the blue shirts here, came down from Michigan or Bowling Green to answer questions and help us out. We'll be here all day and all day tomorrow. Go ahead. So question is, do all Corvettes on 8th generation use the same ratio? So Stingray has two different overall ratios. 4.9 is in the non-Z51 equipped cars, and then a 5.2 is the overall ratio in Z51 Stingrays, in Z06, in eRay, and will be in ZR1. So basically, if you have an electronic limited slip differential, you have a 5.2 ratio. If you have a mechanical limited slip differential, you have a 4.9 overall ratio there. So there's two ratios. It's the same speed gear, the speed gearing, but we change it with what's called the transfer gear inside of the transmission. Go ahead. So question is, can you feel the heat coming from the battery in the eRay tunnel? Personally, I would say no. I've got friends with C5s, C6s. The tunnel in my eRays stay much cooler than that. I can't notice the difference between driving an eRay or a Z06 as far as tunnel heat goes. Power, stuff like that, you feel differences, but heat-wise, no difference between eRay or anything else. Yep. Okay, so question here is on the transmission filter change, and this is part of what we're trying to publish more information and clarify, and I think some dealers are either not paying attention or misconstruing. So we've released a bulletin that says the filter is required at 7,500 miles plus or minus 500. So that gives you 7,000 to 8,000. It's released on service information. I can try and get the number here the rest of the afternoon and be able to provide that to you if you swing back through. Yep, and so that's part of the struggle I'm fighting. I'll say, I am the person who sits there and helps make those decisions on what we're gonna do, what we're gonna publish. It is 7,500 miles plus or minus. If you did it at 5,200 like you did, I would push it personally closer to that 8,000 to get the second one done. Yep, I'd be looking to get it done, you know, as soon as you get back home, or, you know, whenever you can get to a dealer, or if you're going to do it at home yourself. Yep. Yeah, and so just clarifying there, right? If something happens and, right, we just need to know that you followed maintenance. Had you done it at 5,200, well, you know, hey, have you done it since then? If you're at 9 or 10,000 miles, that's one thing. If you've gone to 30,000 miles and skipped that next maintenance as well, that's a whole different issue. That, yep. Yeah. So that's part of why we extended it for, and unfortunately we could only do it, yes, the way our warranty system works, we could only do it for 24s and 25s since they were new models, and we were done selling 22s brand new when we made the change. So the notice is only for what is covered at dealerships for free, right? So in the owner's manual, it still says 7,500 miles and then 22,000 and 45,000 after that. So it's in the owner's manual, and where a lot of the confusion is coming in is what the dealer can cover for free and what is on the customer to change on their own. So I tell people, think about your engine oil, right? We cover one engine oil change. That doesn't mean that's the only engine oil change you ever have to get in the car. That's just the one that GM's providing you for purchasing the vehicle for free. And then everything after that in the maintenance schedule is up to the customer to follow the maintenance recommendations. we can talk after, not up here, but I wouldn't be too concerned with stuff. If you follow maintenance, you'll be all set. So, yep. The question is, eRay motor, does it stay engaged for all speeds or does it disconnect? At 150 miles an hour, the front motor on the eRay would actually be more of a drag than a help. So 150 miles an hour is our disconnect speed, where we go full open, and it's essentially a rear-wheel drive vehicle again at that point. And when you come back down below 150, we will re-engage the front motor again after that. So then if you do 150 or 60 pull, we'll disengage, and then as you're slowing back down, we'll re-engage, and you'll be able to recapture that energy as you go. So the question was around that lowest available or highest available gear on any of the transmissions in the 8th gen cars. You have to be either in full manual mode, pressed in the center, or what we call temporary tap. So if you're driving an automatic and you pull a paddle, that's what we call temporary tap. So on your cluster, it'll go from having a large D for drive with a small gear, whatever gear you're in, to the large number, whatever gear you're in, and then drive down low. Depending on how you're driving, that typically holds for 7 or 8 seconds around there. So if you want to do that and you're in full drive, what I'd recommend is tap once, you're now in temp tap, and then press and hold, and you'll get to the lowest available gear from there. So when doing that lowest available or highest available gear, when can you step back into the pedal? You can be at wide open the whole time. So you can step in and say, hey, I want to get, it'll do a step down, but if you say, I want to get even lower than that, personally, I say, I'm going to pass this semi or slow car in front of me. I'll temp tap, press and hold, and then as you're letting go, that's when we'll actually re-engage the gear. So however you feel like applying throttle from there. So I'll usually temp tap, press and hold, get to as much throttle as I want, and then let it go and launch the car from there. Question on clutches for ZR1. Overall, not many changes. There's slight tweaks to the hubs and baskets and stuff like that. But as far as clutch plates go, friction plates go, and steel plates go, those are the same. Reminder, Z06, we added 1 clutch plate. So we went to 6 and 6 instead of 6 and 5. But we still have 6 and 6 on ZR1. Nope, no issues with slip. We have a lot of controls set up in the car to handle that. If you're temp tapping for lowest, you hold until it shows whatever gear you're in. You can hold it and it'll sit there and keep waiting. If you're off throttle and you keep coasting down, say your lowest available at that point is 4th gear. And if you stay holding and you keep slowing down, then eventually 3rd gear will be your lowest available. It'll shift to 3rd, but you don't actually re-engage clutches until you let that paddle back out. So you can hold as long or as short as you need to get into whatever gear you're targeting, speed you're targeting, whatever you're trying to do from there. Yep, as soon as you let the paddle go though, that's when it re-engages. Question is, will a manual trans come back to 8th generation car? I think Taj has been quoted, he's now retired, that it does not fit in C8. It has not been designed. It would be quite an engineering tear-up to put a manual in this car. I'm a manual fan myself. Working on the DCT, it is as much fun as a manual without having to deal with the 3rd pedal. So I can teach you some more tips and tricks if you'd like, but I have just as much fun in the DCT as I do in manual vehicles. When in full launch control, you'll be in what we call a performance traction management mode. So when you double tap traction control, you get into those PTM modes. You can do wet, dry, sport, race 1 and race 2. Those are all varying levels of StabiliTrak and traction control being on or off. The exact ones that are, I don't know them all offhand. I know they're in the owner's manual and I can look them up for you if you want to know exactly. But yes, it's varying levels of stability track on, stability track off, traction control on, traction control off. There is not currently an electric motor or eRay PAE system on ZR1. We should probably take that back and take a look at it and see. But right now ZR1 is rear wheel drive only, and that's what we're releasing. It's got plenty of power in it so far. I don't know what I'm going to be doing with 1,064 horsepower. So, okay, any other questions right now? All right, like I said, I'm around. I'll answer yours and then find me after that. Cruising around in the city, I go time to time. So going from the hotel to back, I'll usually be in manual. I want to have a little bit more fun, but there's no issues in staying in drive, staying in manual, being in a high gear, being in a low gear. The only thing I would say is don't hang out on redline just for fun. I mean, it's good here and there, but if you're steady state driving at redline, it's not going to be good for you in the long run with your engine, transmission, everything. So, yep, it has normal drive where it automatically shifts itself and you don't have to do anything. All right, I'll set the mic down again. I'm Dave Simpson. Any other questions on transmission or E-Ray stuff, come find me. Thanks.
Way to go, Dave.